Welcome to another edition of Ion Sullivan. I am Mike McGuire, the host of the show, joined today as we are each week by the chairman, Rob Doherty. Rob, good afternoon.
Hey, how are we doing today, Mike?
We're doing great. We are having a typical spring in the Catskills. 80 degrees a couple of days ago, snow flurries today.
Yeah. If you don't like the weather, just wait a minute.
Let's wait a little bit. So let's bring our audience up to date on what's been going on in the last week. Regrettably, we bid farewell to our good friend Mike Brooks on Thursday evening. We had a very well-attended funeral. It was a very sad situation.
Well, it was sad. It was very heartening to me to see. As you know, we went there together, and we were pretty deep into the parking lot. I mean, it was quite that.
And that line kept up right until the services began at about 6:30. That
Correct.
line never dissipated.
No, and from what I understand, from the start of it to the end of it, everyone from the political stage to business to education, and people that just liked Michael Brooks.
He had a good send-off.
Yeah, he was a good man.
It was a very good man. And then baseball season officially begins today because last night we crowned a champion in the NCAAs, and it was Florida.
Yeah. So I couldn't. I unfortunately I went to a planning board meeting in Bethel.
Yep.
Because I love the way planning boards work. They are entertaining at the very least.
At the least, they're entertaining.
So the problem with planning boards, and most people don't know how they work, and so you go to it, and people have their concerns about an issue. Ours issue in the town of Bethel right now is that they want to build a storage unit at the corner of Pine Grove Road and 17B.
Right.
And so
who would be opposed to a storage unit?
I would be opposed to it.
You would be.
I would be, and most people that live in that general neck of the woods would be.
And you own property right near there.
I own several pieces of property, and
a good place for a storage unit.
I don't think that's the case. And so the one problem that always, and we saw this in the legislature, and you see it in every town board, and you see it in every board, people want to have their say, and they have the right to have their say.
Absolutely.
And they get up and they say the same thing, unfortunately, over and over. And, 3 hours deep into the meeting, and they're still saying the same thing.
I seem to remember back-to-back meetings early on in our tenure with the county where we went, 6 or 8 hours.
Yeah, 8.5 hours the first one.
8.5 hours
that one was a
of a parade of people saying the same thing.
Basically, 3 minutes of the same thing. It was like on a loop.
On a loop.
I remember that one young lady that got up to speak, and she was saying that she's not from there. She wasn't from Sullivan County, and she found Sullivan County, and she had put her mom into the nursing home, and how lovely it was, and everyone else that was speaking about how they don't want outsiders there.
Right.
They just wanted the people of Sullivan there, and I was, basically like, whether the county operates it or another operator operates it, I mean, you're going to have the same, mesh of people.
Well, ignorance is bliss, and there was lots of ignorance in that room that day because they were all of the distorted belief that you wanted to eliminate the nursing home when in essence you wanted to build up the nursing home.
So as you know, we were at the lowest rate in the state of New York.
Couldn't get any lower.
Yeah, Medicaid was giving us the lowest rate because the services were, basically it was a sleepover camp.
That's all it was.
I mean, the services were poor, and for any medical needs, they had to leave the building.
Right.
So,
and we're talking about any medical need,
any
like
medical
wound dressing.
Oh yeah,
off to the hospital.
Anything. I mean, and they claimed to be one thing, and they didn't do any of those services. And keep in mind, the county was losing $1 million a month on that.
Well, that's all.
And then so when we moved it over to another company. On an 8-1 vote, by the way, that we agreed to put it into the local court, and then we picked the person who's the company that's running it now on a 7-2 vote,
and that was after public hearings.
Oh,
right out there There was nothing done in the back except maybe some bagels that Annie put out. But other than that, the interviews
and lots of pizza.
And lots of pizza.
Lots of pizza. We bought lots of
lots
pizza.
of pizza. The interviews were done right in public. They were done right in the open. There was nothing that was not transparent.
You want to talk about transparency, right? People would, try to talk to me in the back. I'm like, absolutely not.
Right.
And we had, typical of the legislature that I served on, and apparently this one as well, and the one before, no one was prepared, right? Yeah. So there was about 35 questions asked, right? And so you went around the horn, and you so I was number one. I was also the chair. I was from District 1. So I asked the first question, then Nadia asked a question, then you go around the horn. Ira kept asking the same question. And then after the first round, no one had another question.
None.
No.
Except, well, not no one. There was other questions. It all came from the chair.
Oh, yeah, no. And then I just basically went down my list of questions. I was like, boom, 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 And then so I know that people are watching it on tape, right?
Correct.
Right?
Of course.
So I never asked, in order or anything like that. I try, jazz the questions up.
Sure.
And to be fair, most of us had done really good visits of other places of where they operate and
some
stuff.
Some got sandwiches, some extra sandwiches.
And a couple of extra sweatsuits out of the deal, too. So I can't get my wife a sweatsuit.
The county can be for sale.
For sweatsuits.
The price of sweatsuit
yeah.
in the sandwich.
Yeah. I used to joke around that we gave away the county for
Buddy Hackett tickets.
Buddy Hackett tickets and dinner. Meanwhile, someone else is giving it away for a sweatsuit for their wife.
Right.
And so and a sandwich. So they and you talk about transparency. I mean, that was as wide open could
couldn't
get.
Be more wide open.
I mean, that was just flat out, and one group came in there thinking that they were going to win.
Oh, yeah.
All right?
Well, absolutely.
And they came in last. I mean, when we went, you had three names on the board, and who approved these people? Yeah, you got 2 votes, all right? Went around. The next one, I think, got 3 votes. Went around again. The other one, 7-2. And George Conklin's mom was up in Roscoe.
And that was one of the candidates, the company that runs the Roscoe nursing home.
Correct. And I encouraged him strongly, to vote for the place where his mom is, because God forbid,
that's right.
They weren't very happy about it.
You don't want them to be unhappy.
It's your mom, George. So it all worked out in the end, and we selected the operator, and then they improved the services there. They improved almost everything there.
Despite what the detractors say, the numbers went up.
Oh, significantly.
And the number of beds went up.
Significantly. Please. Also at the same time, you have to remember while we were doing that, the SNU, as they called it, at the hospital, which had 34 beds, closed.
They closed, right.
And they closed because of operational costs.
Right.
And
they're a hospital.
And they're a hospital, and they had every service you could imagine right at their fingertips. It was people just didn't understand it, and so we'll see what happens. But anyway.
So Florida beats Houston last night.
Yeah.
Houston played 35 minutes. Florida played 40. 40 beats 35. That was the end of the game.
Generally speaking.
That's the story. I think that Houston came out in the last 15 seconds expecting Florida to stay in that zone. They went man-to-man because you can't give up a 3 in that position.
Correct.
Bad coaching decision by a guy that's won 799 games. So we're talking about a good coach, but right there, that was a mistake. They were trying to run a play against a zone, and they were in man, and that was the end of it. So college basketball is over.
I will tell you that the women's final. That was a pretty good game. I mean, they came. The good news is that what's her name, Dawn Staley.
Dawn Staley from South Carolina, the U.S. Olympic coach.
Yeah, and she was. They say there's no money in coaching. She was wearing a $7,500 Louis Vuitton sweatsuit.
There's money in coaching at that level.
Yeah,
there's money in coaching. Just ask Rick Pitino and others. There's money.
Yeah.
So All right, so let's we've brought our audience up to date.
Yeah.
What's been going on the last week. The Yankees are still using torpedo bats and still hitting the ball well. I think the Yankees this year could probably use whatever bats they wanted because they can just hit. Let's continue with our report card. We left off last week with Legislator McPhillips in District 1. And he made a lot of promises, and we didn't get a chance to cover everything.
Okay.
So we want to go into the last two areas that we didn't get a chance to cover last week because we want to be fair to the legislators and all of their projects that they had promised. So
Correct.
Just to bring our audience back up to speed, what we're doing is we're looking back at the campaign materials of the legislators and grading them based on how they did, based not on what you think they should be doing, but based on what they said they would do.
Correct.
So the last two areas we want to talk about, and this was maybe the biggest one, and I say the biggest one because for Legislator McPhillips, Matt McPhillips, so we have two Legislator McPhillips, during the debate that he had with the person running against him, I don't remember who that was.
Some guy.
The person running against him, he made a big deal about affordable housing. And affordable housing is always one of these topics that makes me step back because I think about high-paying jobs, not low-paying houses, and I'm
Correct.
not so sure how many people want to raise their hand to say, we need more affordable housing. Well, how many people are going to sell their house for below market value?
Correct.
So, and we know what has created the boom in the market is the temporary rentals.
Correct.
So, Legislator McPhillips said that he's going to work tirelessly to ensure that people of the county have safe, decent housing that doesn't break the bank. Well, if you wind up with a pretty sizable mortgage, that doesn't break the bank. That actually helps the bank.
Correct.
It doesn't. It hurts the person that's trying to pay for it.
Correct.
And he talked about how his wife and he had been in dealing with the same issue of trying to get affordable housing. And in fact, he had lost his housing. He'd been evicted, he said, from the house that he was working in. And that he is going to promote policies that encourage development of reasonably priced housing in our county. So we're a year in.
Oh, we're 14 months.
14 months in.
No, 16 months now.
Actually,
We're in the
more
16th,
than that. Oh,
in
yeah,
the 16th
because
month.
we're now in April, so we're 16 months in. And they've done some things. So it's not like it's a month in. It's 16 months in. How are they doing with the affordable housing?
Okay, so before I left in the budget, we had left them $2.2 million to expand on affordable housing. We called it workforce housing. It's not for low-income individuals. It's for the people are in the middle that husband's working, wife's working, couple however they're made up are working, and they just need that extra. They can't afford the house, but if I'm not mistaken, and you can go back and look this up if you want, Mike, he said that when he lost the lease on the house, which by the way was not in the district.
Correct.
Okay, so he had to move into the district. Let's be clear. Okay, so he's kind of telling a little bit of a fib.
Well, he was in the district, then he left the district.
Correct.
And then he had to find a place back in the district.
Correct. And so only for a little while, though, Mike.
That's right.
So he said that he couldn't find a place to rent or to buy. He says that in his. You can go on his website and look at that. Well, that's a lie because he bought the property of where he lives now in 2021, and he submitted plans to build his house in 2022.
And he ran in 2023.
Correct. So he knew the house just wasn't finished.
Right.
Okay. So when he sits there and says, "Oh, we couldn't find a house to buy that was affordable," well, first of all, I don't want to get into anyone's pocketbook here, but his house is bigger than most people's homes. It's brand spanking new.
Right.
Okay. So when he sits there and says that we couldn't find a place to buy, he had no intention of buying a home.
Of course not.
He was building a brand new home.
Right.
And he tries to say, oh, me and my wife were a hardworking young couple and we couldn't figure out our housing situation, and we sympathize with you over that. But that's a lie.
Right.
It's a flat out lie.
Because he knew what he was doing. He had plans drawn up. He was building it. And look, everybody should have a nice house. I'd be very happy.
No. I have no problem with that. But then don't sit there and say, like let's say a tree fell on my house today, God forbid, right?
Like one fell a couple weeks ago.
Oh, my son's house, yes, right behind my house, and and the tree fell on my house, and the contractor came over.
Roy, we'll call him Roy.
Yeah, we'll call him Roy. Let's say, and Roy comes over and says, "Hey, Bob, it's going to be 5 weeks." The insurance company's got to come. They got to check it out. They're going to write you a check. And then, then you're going to, then I'll fix the roof for you and all that. It's 5 weeks. That's like me getting on this microphone and saying, I have nowhere to go.
Right.
All right. I am stuck. And, the plight of a businessman, in the middle of the winter in Sullivan County, where will I go?
Right.
All right. And I'd be like, I don't know where I'm even going to go. I am stuck here. When I would literally walk across the driveway and then just, go to the house next door, right?
Yeah.
Or go to one of the ones I own behind me, right?
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't be so, I'd be like, it's a pain in the neck, I'm used to this, I'm used to that. Our showers are more modern, the bathrooms are more modern, blah, blah, blah. But I'm not going to sit here and lie to you about it.
Right.
And that's what he did. He flat out lied to you about it.
Right. So your administration dealt a lot with the housing situation.
Correct.
Because what we found coming out of COVID was a spike in the real estate market in this county.
Correct.
Because people were trying to get away from the city, get away from the populated areas.
Very much what happened during 9/11.
Exactly.
Very much what happened. It's almost identical.
Almost identical. And we saw identical. What we saw, though, was that much of the inventory came off the market.
Correct, because of the short-term rentals.
And a lot of the inventory that was purchased after COVID dissipated and folks went back to the city, they either stayed as second homes, but many of them became temporary rentals.
Well, so what happened was, and I use this example all the time. So let's say you live in Brooklyn on DeKalb Avenue, and you and your significant other have a 2-bedroom apartment on DeKalb Avenue in Brooklyn, and you're paying $3,000 a month. Okay, so now you can buy a house in Sullivan County, and you're both working. And you have no children, you just have a nice little doggy, and you're like, I really like it upstate. And you're like, okay, this is great. So what happens is you say, wait, I'm paying $3,000 a month, and I live in DeKalb Avenue.
Right.
Okay. And I really like it upstate New York. I like the vibe. I like, downtown Narrowsburg, downtown Bethel, downtown whatever township. And as we know, over 70% of the short-term rentals are on the western side of the county.
Side for obvious reasons.
Correct. It's very rural and all that fun stuff.
People will want a vacation along the river.
Correct.
And near Bethel Woods.
And White Lake and all that fun stuff.
Sure.
That Smallwood is loaded with them.
Ideal.
Correct. So you can go buy a house, right? Now it's you and a significant other, and you can buy a home, for $300,000, let's say, right? So now you put down your $60,000 on the home. You have a $240,000 mortgage, and this was back then. And let's say you get a 3% interest rate, right? So now it's for every $100,000, it's $300, and now you're paying with insurance and everything else less than $1,000 a month, right? So now your monthly expenses are now $4,000 a month, right?
Right.
But you're a hardworking person, and your significant other's a hardworking person. You can't use it every weekend.
Correct.
You have family obligations down the city. I'm going to this wedding. I'm going to that thing. I'm doing this. I got this. I got a show over here. I'm just too busy at work. So then you start renting it out, right? You get on VRBO. You get on Airbnb or wherever platform. As we found out, there are a lot of platforms.
There's a lot of platforms, and we walk down each one of them.
Yeah, we walked down 17 platforms. Okay,
and thank God for the Sullivan County Visitors Association, because they are responsible for the increase in bed tax.
Without a doubt. So just to go off on that tangent real fast, when I came into office, the year before I came into office, it was $900,000
in
bed tax. After I had the county attorney's office sue 16 different agencies, okay, it was over $2.5 million.
Right.
Okay, we almost tripled the amount,
and that's because prior to that, the temporary rentals were not paying their bed tax.
Correct, and we went after them, and we got them. Down to tenter. I mean, if you put up a tent in this county, you're paying us.
You're paying us, which is all good.
So it's a commercial entity. So now you rent that house out. A couple of weeks during the summer, you rent it out. A couple of weekends during different activities during the winter time, and next thing you know, you're getting $3,000-$4,000 a week for this thing, right?
Yep.
So you're renting this thing out, and you're bringing in $50,000 renting out your house.
Correct.
Right. So now, not only are you paying for the house you bought and you're using 20 weeks out of the year, right? But now you're paying your home
in Brooklyn. Sure.
And let me tell you something. I remember the first time I said that in 2020. I said, this is what's going to happen, right? And I remember you and Josh both looked at me like, I never really thought of it like that, right? And you're both looking at me. I said, you watch, mark my words. I remember when we negotiated the SCVA new contract, the president at the time said, we will never break $2 million.
That was a quote. Never happened. So you're giving us snowballs in winter by promising us increments after $2 million. We'll never see it.
Never see it, okay? They taking more money today than they took in the 4 years before me, okay?
Close to $3 million.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's not even close, okay? We changed the whole marketplace, okay? So now, as soon as I said that, you guys were looking at me like I was a little crazy, and then you start thinking about it, and then within 2 years, that was the model everyone was going on.
Of course.
Okay? And the western side blew up. We went to 2 different supervisors' meetings, and we said, hey, if you adopt this law, okay, and we had a very specific law, we will do your inspections for you. Okay.
And they would get money for that.
And they would do so let's say you had, let's say Bethel, New York, okay? And they currently don't have a short-term rental law.
Right.
Okay. And let's say we charge $500 for the fee.
Which
right?
is a bunch.
Correct. So I think there should be 3 levels of it. I think there should be the mom and pop who are just trying to pay their taxes, and they go to Florida or something like that. Then you have the intermediate person who, 20 weeks out of the year they're using the home, and other weekends they're renting out the home. And then the people who just buy them flat out to rent them 100% of the time,
which is a lot.
Okay, which is a lot. So I think there should be different fees along the way, different fee schedule. So we said we would hire the person, right? And we were looking at hiring 2 people.
Right.
And then they would go out and do the inspections so that the buildings are safe. Because even though they are a commercial entity, there's no one governing them. Nothing.
No smoke detectors.
No fire extinguishers, no exit signs.
Exits. Right.
The safety of the building. And the big issue that we're seeing in Smallwood is no one's checking the septic system.
Right.
So these septic systems could be 30, 40, 50 years old, and they're bringing 6 grown adults to it to stay for a week.
They're not all like Mohawk Trail.
They're not all like Mohawk Trail, which has a brand new septic. Brand new. I have the pictures and everything.
Right.
But anyway, and the funny thing about that is when we took the old tank out, it was basically just an oil tank.
Yeah.
All right. And they had holes in it.
That's
what they used. And it was like a 300-gallon tank. I mean, we put it in a professional tank.
Right.
With a whole leach system, the whole deal. Right. So, and then there's a lot of waterways that are seeing the same problem that I just described to you that's happening on mountain lakes. So we had offered that. We got zero townships to say yes to us.
Not one.
Not zero.
In fact, a couple of them were quite agitated that we were even there, trying to bring them revenue for nothing.
Correct. You don't have to do anything. We'll pay. You tell us, we have the list of where every place is.
Yep.
And we will be more than happy
Yep.
to monitor the safety of that building through a inspection process on an annual basis. They told us, have a nice day.
Some of these towns, and the nice thing about the proposal that you made was any pro rata sharing of, say, sales tax is going to be dominated by Mamakating, Liberty, Fallsburg, Thompson.
Correct.
And then Bethel.
Well, Bethel only has 3,000 people.
Yeah. This would have benefited the underserved, smaller communities.
Correct.
The Lumberlands, the Highlands.
The Tustons, yeah.
Tustons
Correct.
And Delaware along the river. They would have been the ones that stood to gain.
Correct.
And yet there was no takers for a law that would have required these inspections, the county would have provided the person to do them and would not do it. The other issue that brought about the growth in the short-term rentals, the temporary rentals, is that if you're a landlord in Sullivan County, you're playing a dangerous game because you get people in. If they don't pay their rent, it takes you months and thousands of dollars to get them out. Whereas with the short-term rentals, they rent for 3 days. You get paid in advance,
correct,
including the cleaning fee, and then they're out.
So you have to go 90 days before you can even...
If somebody's been living there more than 2 years, that's correct.
Right, to even start the process.
Right.
Okay. You got to get onto a calendar.
Yep.
Okay. A judge's calendar. Okay. Probably another 2-3 months. Okay. You have to have the case heard. Okay. Then you get a decision, right? So you're 7 months into the gig,
right,
with no money coming in,
right?
Zero coming,
money, and there's been no money, so you're probably closer to a year with no money.
Correct. And so now you get, you got it, right?
Right.
Here we go. Here's the list. You still have to wait before you can even go to the civil department or the sheriff's department.
Yep.
Okay. But you have to wait. I believe it's another month before you can even bring it to them. Okay. Right. So now you're 13 months into the gig,
right,
okay? Then you go on the list. And by the way, the list is 4 or 5 months old, okay?
Correct.
Long, okay?
Right.
And so now you're 18 months with zero.
Zero coming in.
And and I know the people who have not paid you in 18 months are wrecking your place.
Destroying it.
So why would I, if I was a homeowner that was into the rental game, do that when... Now, I own a few homes, okay? Why wouldn't I just Airbnb them? And I don't do this, by the way. I don't do any Airbnbs.
That's correct. I
just have them as buffers against other people living next to me.
It's the walls of your fort.
The walls of my fort, correct. Until I can put a rock wall up, I will own those homes, okay? So you now, why would you risk... people coming in and wrecking your home when you can hire a service?
Yep.
So let's say you have this. Let's say a bungalow in a cabin, whatever you want to call it, in Smallwood. Yep. Which, by the way, are going for $300,000. I mean, these aren't cheap homes. And you put $20,000 into the home. Okay. You fix it up. You make it nice. Your wife goes in, she puts nice pictures in there, the whole deal, blah, blah. And now you rent it out, like you said. And there's services that come in and clean it for you.
Yeah. And the cleaning fee is paid up front.
Up front. Everything's paid up. It's on a credit card. Boom, done. Why wouldn't you do this?
And at the end of the month, if it's going to be a full-time rental, you're $3,000-$4,000 ahead. Versus what are you going to get in rent for the place? $1,000, $1,500, if you get it?
Correct.
So those two things together created a boom.
Correct.
What you and I confronted was places like the school districts, BOCES, the county, the hospital, Center for Discovery. We couldn't bring up middle management level people because there was no inventory. And a young professional coming in to rent, there was literally nothing.
So there was, I know this for a fact, in 2023, BOCES had hired 4 people. Okay? Every single one of them accepted the job. None of them started the job because they could not find adequate housing.
Correct.
Okay? So then what happened was, there was a little war going on between school districts, the county, BOCES, Center for Discovery, our largest employer in the county, where everyone was stealing each other's middle management.
You had to do it. I mean, that's the only place that was the workforce.
That was the workforce.
You could not bring somebody in from Orange County or Rockland County. You couldn't do it.
No, and so now everyone was stealing each other's workers.
Right.
And it was kind of crazy for about a year and a half there.
Yeah.
And you were stealing each other's work. And then you would see someone, let's say someone from BOCES. And then you would see, Mr. DeFore at an event and be like, hey, sorry about that,
Right.
And you're like, oh, no, don't worry about it because you're about to lose your secretary tomorrow.
Which happened.
Yeah, which happened.
We brought in his secretary into the county attorney's office.
Correct. And while he's apologizing for stealing one middle management from you, you stole someone else. And then it got kind of crazy. And we had done a salary study. And I mean, you could literally toss that thing in the trash.
Of course.
Because, I mean, it started going back and forth. I mean, pretty. And don't get me wrong, the work made out in this situation.
Sure they did.
And quality workers, finally had the opportunity to have the chance to go out on the free market, and it worked out pretty well for a lot of people, and a lot of people that deserved salary bumps.
And again, in a small county, a small community, we have a limited professional pool of candidates, so there was no option but to grab other people's.
Correct.
Go out and actually recruit other people's, and the housing situation made it very difficult, if not impossible, to bring people in. A family that's living in Rockland, Westchester, maybe they're renting there and they can come up here for what they're renting and they could buy a place and their kids could have more open spaces, all the reasons that you would want to raise a family. It's why you raise your family here and why I raise my family
Correct.
here. And we couldn't get it because there was no inventory. But let's get back to Matt McPhillips.
Sure.
Now. So Matt McPhillips was going to work tirelessly to promote policies. Well, that's something that the legislature does, is create policies.
That's their main job, and allocate money. That's
and
their
allocate
two main
money.
jobs.
That will encourage development of reasonably priced houses in our county. So you drive around the county. What are we seeing? How's he doing after 16 months?
On the housing issue?
Yeah. Not a thing.
Not a thing. Nothing.
Nothing.
Less than nothing.
How important was that after January 1st of 24? Probably wasn't very important.
He was elected. What did he care?
He was elected. He pandered to the group that he needed to pander to.
Correct. And, you're 14 months into the gig, and, the funny thing is if the governor comes down and makes the term 1 year shorter, because as you know, no one does anything in the last year of office.
That's what they say.
Right? Except this guy.
We did. Yeah.
I was like, I'm working to the last day, I guarantee you. And I worked to the last day. I literally worked till 5 o'clock my last day, packed my box up, and walked out the door. That's what literally happened.
And your people did as well.
Correct.
I worked until 4:30, and then got a message on my phone that I had to be out of the office at the end of the week.
And even though that person did not have the authority to do that.
Oh, of course not. But we don't stop that.
No. Don't get caught up in that.
We don't get caught up in that.
Don't get caught up in that nonsense, please.
All right.
So I that part I would give him in that phone because he's done less than nothing.
Okay, the other issue, we used to sit in meetings every month and listen to Albie come up and give us the dreadful statistics on the opioid situation and on addiction. And one of these weeks coming up soon, he's very busy. We're going to bring Mr. Conity in here to DA, and he's going to talk to us about the different programs and plans that they have and how they're dealing in criminal justice system with trying to get people help and get them into treatment. But we're on Matt McPhillips now.
Okay.
So Matt McPhillips says, and folks, again, go online and look up his campaign materials. He says it's critical, and the reason I wanted to take these two together is he ties them together. It's critical to have, quote, quality, temporary, and emergency housing so that families are not living in conditions that contribute to the problem. Well, one of the places that they were allowed to live in January of 24, addicts had a residential treatment facility right there in Monticello in Catholic Charities, used to be called the Recovery Center, where we had a county-based residential facility. So this is what the legislature's plan, or Matt McPhillips' plan, is going to be.
And Kat Scott's also.
And Kat Scott
who's
also.
head of Health and Family Services.
Yeah. And Mr. Alvarez.
Correct.
And many of them had advocated for
Nadia
this
Reich
kind of
has.
thing. Nadia, certainly.
Now, keep in mind, under my leadership, myself, Wendy Brown, and the Honorable Megan Galligan, who was the DA at the time, started the Drug Task Force. Okay. We also brought in Lexington, which was would you say treatment? It's more of a...
So it's an outpatient treatment.
Correct.
The county used to do treatment in-house, SCADIS, Sullivan County Alcohol and Drug Abuse Services. And that was outsourced partially because we were having trouble staffing with middle management people.
Correct.
That program for what we talked about a few minutes ago.
Correct.
So now we outsource it to Lexington. So we have Lexington is the outpatient program where people that are able to function and not that bad, maybe had a DWI, maybe had some issues with painkillers and they need some help. They have the outpatient program run by Lexington. And then the inpatient for the more serious people was the Recovery Center, what I'll call it, Catholic Charities was the proper name, because Catholic Charities came in and took it over when the Recovery Center couldn't make it financially. Okay. So it's an important thing, and people are literally dying, and our chairman, Ms. Reich, and now Matt McPhillips and Mr. Alvarez all spoke eloquently,
Passionately.
Kat Scott passionately about the need to service the addicted community. So where are we? 16 months in, Matt. How have you done with getting housing for addicts?
Okay, so they're opening up a homeless shelter.
Okay.
Okay.
And that's going to be any better than the hotels that we use now?
Well, the Night's Inn, I don't know if you've ever done any 18B work, but that thing is just a daily, it's basically like a fight club in that place.
Well, with Pepsi leaving Liberty, the new export in Liberty is these fight clubs, as you call them, which mean it's the Liberty Police could keep themselves busy 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, just trying to deal with the issues in these 3 or 4 hotels here in Liberty.
Let me tell you something. They could literally rent 2 rooms there.
Yep.
One room would be a booking room, the other one would be a jail, and it would be full all the time.
Full all the time.
It would be a 24-hour booking process.
Right.
It is night and day. But to Matt's, claim that, he was going to fight addiction, I believe, what's today's date?
It's April 8th.
Okay, April 8th. I think we're within a month of Catholic Charities closing.
May 1st, they're done.
Okay, so less than a month from today, 23 days from today.
Yep.
Catholic Charities, the only in-county
inpatient.
In-county inpatient.
Servicing primarily the residents of the county.
Correct. Is closing.
Well, that doesn't make sense because I remember Kat Scott and Nadia and Matt McPhillips in his campaign being so passionate that the 46 people that we served in the adult care center needed that, and we had to do whatever we could to save it. So now we've got 100 or more county residents in Catholic Charities. Where are they going to go?
Well, we don't care.
Because we had 3 other nursing homes at the time.
I mean, we don't care.
Right.
Because, it's not campaign season.
Oh,
right? But let me tell you something. Here's getting a little trick. Again, if the governor does what everyone expects her to do and makes the campaign for the legislature next season.
Right.
All this is going to get hung around everyone's neck.
Of course.
Because they're just sitting back saying, oh, we have plenty of time. People will forget about this. We'll forget about this. So...
And they're just the addicts anyway, so...
Well, I don't know how they feel about them personally, but what I can tell you is they've done zero for these people.
We've gone backwards. I mean, they made more of an issue over the 12 people that inspect restaurants and camps moving their base of operations to Middletown from Monticello.
Which, by the way, they get their reports
on an iPad.
On an iPad. You could be, I don't know if you know how an iPad works these days, but you could be anywhere in America.
Right.
And get it and download it.
This is where you go.
Okay, so when I got my restaurant inspected, they were like, okay, here you go. I'm going to go out to the car, print. I said, just put it through my printer. Walked over, boom, 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 print it out. There you go, sign this. Thank you very much. Put the A on the door and walked out the door. And that was that.
That's it.
That was it.
That's it.
Have a nice day.
There was an outcry of how could we let the Department of Health leave
because they were standing up there talking about doctors and stuff.
Correct.
I'm like, we're talking about pools and hot dog carts.
They're talking to 12 people that inspect restaurants and camps. That's it.
That's all they do.
Incredible. Now, the other statement that Mr. McPhillips makes is that he wants to ensure that the county is a leader in sustainable development of our priceless natural resources. Now, we talked about Smallwood and we talked about the issues with the septics there and the effect that was having on the lake in Smallwood.
So now I'm on the lake committee in Smallwood. Okay, so I have a meeting tonight at 7 o'clock.
Is that because you're the only person who's allowed to run a motorboat on that?
I am the only person.
Fish?
I am the. I can't fish on Tuesdays though.
On Tuesdays, right?
According to my deed, I can't fish on Tuesdays because Frank fishes on Tuesdays. Apparently, on the Frank Ballard, I believe it is. Yeah.
So how are they doing? So you made sure you got money to protect that lake.
So not only that lake, so we had put $60,000 into an account so that any township that wanted to test the water in their municipality didn't have to take it out of their own funds. They could go to the county and say, I want to test, Beaver Lake. I want to test Mountain Lake. I want to test Stump Pond. I want to test whatever. And the county would pay for it. And then the county this is how we can guarantee clean waterways.
Right. And you actually gave money for a maybe somewhat experimental program in your district.
Correct.
Where they put some devices.
It's called the Sonic Buoy.
Right.
And it's worked. It's worked. At the end of there's a lot of things that can be done. Oxygen is what you need to do the most. We're going to discuss that tonight at our meeting. And it's a constant passion for me to keep mountain lakes, swimmable. For years they never tested the water. It wasn't an issue. Maybe the septic tanks were only 30 years old when I was a kid swimming them, but now they're 100 years old.
Sure.
So it's a little bit of an issue.
And the concentration of people with the Airbnbs coming in.
There's more people.
Rentals. Those places used to be used a couple weeks in the summer, and then the land had all year to.
Correct, and you basically had parents and two smaller children. Right. So and little Johnny and little Susie each had their own rooms and blah blah blah, and they had that nice little cabin on a 50 by 100 acre parcel, and then they had all year to regenerate. But now we don't have that situation. Now we have a situation where they're constantly being used by adults, and it's a different ballgame.
So the last statement that I pulled off of his campaign materials was he is committed to working with those who need help. So we talk about, with respect to housing and addiction, because I want to get, in our last 10 minutes, I want to get to the legislature in total.
Correct.
What grade do we give Matt McPhillips?
So I'm a little biased because 14 months into my gig, we had different county.
And you were in the throes of COVID.
One, I was in throes of COVID. Two, on March 2nd, March 2nd, I had a surgery that took out 3/4 of my left lung and replaced 3 of my ribs. So other than that,
and yet you wanted to breathe at meetings too. And you wear a mask.
Yeah. I got mocked several times. I had charges filed against me, even though I had a doctor's note from the #1 thoracic surgeon in the world that I have to wear a mask.
Masks that we know didn't work.
That we know for a fact didn't work.
And now we had a couple of public regulars that got up and told us how much they work. We had somebody that used to work for public health nursing. She had a desk, but she stood on it a lot. That would come up and tell us how well they work. But the #1 thoracic surgeon in the world, the guy that literally wrote textbooks on thoracic surgery,
correct,
he told you they don't work.
He wrote over 100 chapters on it, yes.
Right. And he said,
Rob,
masks not doing a thing.
He said, Rob, he said, you need an exchange of fresh air constantly. Otherwise, you're getting an infection in what's left of your lung. And then we're going to have a major problem. So he gave me a doctor's note, me, the county attorney, and the head of resources, human resources, knew about the note. No one else needs to know about the note. And I was challenged on it. And then I had charges filed against me by the current chair for not wearing a mask on 2 separate occasions, and both times they got denied. And she was kind of incredulous. I mean, she just found it absolutely insane because there was a mandate for them. But if she read
unless there was a medical reason not to wear it.
Correct.
All right. So can we get Matt McPhillips up to a D-? I mean, he still has to repeat the class, but can we get him to a D-, or is this going to be the same fate?
I'm a little biased, to be fair. How about I try to be as fair as I possibly can and give him an incomplete?
Well, that's very fair.
Well, if you don't do anything,
it's incomplete.
It's incomplete. Right?
All right. So in the time we have left today, this is the third in our 3-part series on grading the legislature. Let's look at the legislature overall. Now, I was at their very first meeting when they organized, and they were so gleeful that day that there was going to be civility, and that the employees would be the centerpiece of what they do, and that finally, employees could come out of their offices without fear of retribution against them. They didn't have to walk on eggshells anymore.
That line was actually used.
That line was used, is that finally the employees, particularly the female employees, don't have to walk on eggshells, that this is going to be a kinder and friendlier legislature to the employees. So I know that you watch many of the meetings, and this is going to be a legislature that's touchstone was going to be civility. The civility would return to the legislature so that all members could feel like their input was valued, and we would talk about things instead of just thrusting things on people. So you watch a lot of the meetings. I've watched a couple of them. How's the legislature doing?
Okay, so as far as civility goes, Kat Scott, who was in District 5, was a member of the audience before, and they used to just blurt out stuff like crazy stuff. And they would attack George Conklin. She still is blurting stuff out, does not understand the process. The process is simple. As a legislator, if you are not the chair, you raise your hand, and then you get recognized, and then you speak. And the rules are of the legislature that everyone has a turn to speak. So if it's a 9-person discussion, the chair must go through in numeric order of how people speak. So sometimes 6 or 7 people have to speak before you get to speak again. They don't like that. So they just start blurting stuff out. There's name calling.
You mean like Mr. Alvarez, Mr. Perillo, Madam Chair? Is that the names that they're calling out?
No, they're not calling those names out. Not as bad as it was when Mr. Perillo told Alan Sorensen he was the worstest legislator ever. That's what he was told. And before that, Nikki was called a ducking butthole, we'll say. Okay, just trying to keep it clean here. But that got ignored. Don't worry about that stuff. If you watch most of those meetings, 90% of the time, and I was wrong. I will admit I was wrong. I should just let it roll off my back. I was responding to someone who just yelled some obscenity to me, and I was like, "What?" And I was singly focused on my constituents and what's best for them, and I was going to take the blows for them, and I did make some mistakes in that, but the civility or lack of civility was not started by me. It was started by them, and now you see it unchecked. And now it goes on. It is insanity at these meetings. Insanity.
So I'm in contact with some of my former colleagues that are still employees there.
So am I.
And
would they be my colleagues?
They would be your colleagues.
Oh, okay.
Our colleagues.
Okay, so I don't know how that works because I'm the chair. I don't know how it works.
Well, it's still colleagues.
Yeah.
Well, see, you were the chair who rolled up your sleeves and worked with people.
Correct.
Because you were there 40, 50, 60 hours a week.
Correct.
As opposed to 40, 60 hours
a year,
semi-annually or annually, whatever the case may be.
Yes.
So let's focus in our last couple of minutes on the new chair, Chairman Reich. She was formerly the supervisor of the town of Lumberland, and I have an opportunity to go down there now. They're in that town is in great hands right now.
And I understand that Suzanne does not have an opponent in this.
Well, we're happy about that because a town like Lumberland, the people are smart enough to know that in Suzanne Edzenga, we've got a great supervisor that is committed to the best interest of Lumberland without really being concerned about her own power. She wants to make Lumberland a better place
for her
live.
daughters. Yeah,
and we've got a great board, great people down there. They're very happy. But that's where Nadia came out of there, and
then she was vice chair.
She was vice chair for 4 years.
Correct.
And
on the legislature that overspent their revenues 4 years in a row.
Well, you want to go for the gusto.
Well, they did the same again this year.
And then she...
Well, last year.
So now she has ascended the throne, so to speak. So can we tell after 16 months, what are her priorities as chair? What's her agenda as chair besides getting reelected?
So I've watched a lot of meetings.
Right. Okay.
I have no idea. Okay.
Shouldn't the chair be the one setting the direction? Or at least trying to.
So as you know, you were in a lot of meetings with me, general meetings and a lot of private meetings. And I was driving the bus on my vision for the county.
Which was on your palm card.
Correct. I did almost every. I didn't get the bus station across the street fixed, but other than that, but it was closed for a long time too.
Right.
To be fair, okay. There's other people, Nancy Buck, and other people, the late Michael Brooks and others that would always talk to me about, I love your vision for this county, because I spoke about it openly all the time.
Oh, Nancy Brooks is a female that works there. And Nancy Buck is a female that works there. They were all afraid of you.
So whenever I walk in the treasurer's office, all the ladies that sit there, there's about 6 of them there. They say, hello, second floor. And I say, hello, first floor. And to this very day, we still do that. Then I go and they open the door for me, and I get a hug. I was in there last Thursday.
And you don't do a lot of hugging.
I don't do a lot of hugging. And then Anita's there, and she's always hi. And then, the next county treasurer comes out and gives me a hug.
That's Kathleen Lara.
Yeah, Kathleen Lara.
She announced that she's running because she's been keeping it secret.
She's keeping it on the DL. Yeah,
she's keeping it on the DL for sure.
And then, I'm there to see Nancy about, different topics. And then, I speak with Nancy, and I usually have a good 45-minute conversation with Nancy about different things going on in the county and blah, blah. And so, keep in mind, there's probably 10 women in that group. One of my businesses in Wurtsboro, it's located in Wurtsboro. Many of the women who currently work in the county come down for lunch or for breakfast on the weekends. I see them. One of them works for me.
There you go.
That is totally fear of me, and I'm the worst person in the world.
Now, in a diner, if you walk on eggshells, that's not good.
That's not good at all.
Because the price of eggs
come down a little bit, but it's still high.
Right. Still you don't want people walking on them.
No. We wouldn't have that. But yeah, so I don't know what the agenda is. I still haven't been able to figure it out. If the agenda is to spend money, they have done a fabulous job.
They've done a great job of that because they've spent down the fund balance, the fund balance from $87 million. They've cut that in half.
Correct. So the one good thing that this legislature has done is the ALS and BLS cars that they have driving around the county.
Yeah, it's great because you can sit here in Liberty and you get the feeling like you're in New York City because you hear the sirens blasting up and down the road. It's amazing since they've come in. They have the emergencies have increased because for years I never heard sirens up and down the street. Now you hear them 4 or 5 times a day. It's like being in Manhattan.
So I've spoken to several of the drivers, and they're on the move. I mean, they do a lot of good work.
Yeah, they do a lot of things.
Unfortunately, they can't transport, but
Right.
that'll work out.
That'll work out. All right. So overall, that's the report card on the legislature as a whole and some of the new people that promised big things. And again, our assessment comes from what they said they were going to do, not what we believe they should have done.
But they haven't fixed anything, and they haven't moved forward on any project.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So these are still issues that the nursing home is still owned by the county.
And that was not going to happen.
Okay. Capital projects are just building without getting done.
The jail is still owned by the county, despite opportunities to sell it to people that would renovate it.
The old
put
jail.
it on the tax rolls.
Yeah.
The old jail.
Yeah.
Put it on the tax rolls and maybe create some of that affordable housing that Mr. McPhillips, but he did not favor that because they want to cave into the unified court system.
He voted no to that. And,
correct.
And you don't have to vote. You don't have to vote. Fall to the unified court system. It's your county. You get to tell them what to do. We have a more than competent county attorney that can fight that fight for you.
Yep.
They don't get to dictate their building or anything like that. So what the unified court system's trying to do is they're trying to take family court and merge it with inside the courthouse building, so that they can save labor.
Right.
That's what they.
Right.
So they're trying to save 10 officers' salaries.
Right.
Okay, and put it on the backs of Sullivan County, and no one's standing up for the people of Sullivan County, saying we can't afford a $150 million new courthouse.
Well, and there's options.
There's many options.
We'll talk about that in a future episode of Eye on Sullivan, because the unified court system has the right to tell the county that they have to provide adequate facilities. And we have a classic old courthouse, but so do many, many other counties. And we just had to build a jail. And if you build an annex to the existing courthouse, you still have the same security issues that they're concerned about in the existing courthouse.
Well, we also have a library that's outdated because no one uses a library anymore.
Correct.
Because we have laptops and iPads and all the fun stuff.
Correct.
And we asked them if we could make that into a courtroom.
Right.
And they turned us down
turned us
cold.
down, no.
Okay. We asked
the
them.
DA's office in the basement.
Correct. We asked them about other parts of the building, if we can reconfigure it. And you and I walked through the building.
Went through the building.
And we gave some suggestions to the unified court system. They turned us down cold. By the way, they don't give you a reason why they turn you down.
Right.
They just say, "Thank you very much." The answer is no. We need a $150 million bill.
So we'll talk more about the court, but that's just another opportunity that this legislature let go. They're doing everything possible to drive one of the premier air ambulance services in the world that is trying to be based here in Sullivan County at our airport, and they're trying to run them out as well. And we'll talk more about them and maybe have a guest on to talk about what their company is all about. But once again, Rob, we have come to the end of an hour. Jacob is standing on his head, trying to get us to shut things down right now. But there's just so much to do. So, folks, we remind you again that we need to keep getting the subscriptions up. We are climbing each week. When we get to 1,000, we'll be able to be interactive. And for our audience, we are not exclusive here. If you have a view that's different from ours, you want to come on, you want to debate Rob, if one of our existing legislators want to come on the air here and speak with us about their vision and what they've accomplished, if we've missed things, we invite you to come on. Next week, we'll hope to start back in again with some guests. But we need you to subscribe because that will allow us potentially to become interactive where we can live stream and have a live chat going on. Leave us a comment. Tell us that we're wrong. Tell us that we're right. We don't give any awards for giving us a good comment, and we don't cut you off if it's a bad comment. We want to see both sides. We want to give this forum to you to exchange ideas. And share the link. When you listen to us on Spotify or on YouTube, share the link, put it on your page so that more people can hear it and we can have a wider discourse about what is happening here in the county. If you have ideas for guests you think we should have on, drop us a line, leave us a comment, or drop us an email at ionsullivan@gmail.com. That's ionsullivan, E-Y-E, onsullivan@gmail.com. So, on behalf of the chairman, Rob Doherty, I am Mike McGuire, thanking you for joining us for another episode of Ion Sullivan. We'll be back next week with another edition of Ion Sullivan. Have a great week, folks.